everyone, welcome to Word Made Digital. This is episode 11. I'm your host, Joanna LaFleur. On today's episode, we have my friend Stephanie McCabe. Stephanie McCabe works for Bethel Music, and she is the events creative producer. So you're going to love the conversation because we're talking about behind the scenes on Bethel Music's creative process, on their major events and their conferences, their live stuff. What does that look like and how does that come together? So we're going to look really at the behind the scenes of the infrastructure behind a lot of the music and stuff we probably know and love and admire from maybe a distance. And we're going to look a little bit behind the scenes on with Steph today. So Steph and I met in 2010 when we were both working at C4 Church in Ajax, Ontario. It's a church that I still work at. And Steph has now found herself out in California and traveling the world with Bethel Music, doing all kinds of amazing events with them. We're going to be looking at how worship leading and creativity are facilitating an encounter with the presence of God. That's how they view it at Bethel. We're going to be looking at how we get fresh ideas and what happens when we get the crutch of comparison or always trying to one-up ourselves to be bigger and better. We're going to be looking behind the scenes at their Heaven Come conference they did this summer in Dallas and looking into their 2019 events and some stuff that they're creating for that already that Steph is involved with. We're also going to talk about merchandising with Steph and why do they do merchandising and who creates that and what does that help facilitate for them at Bethel Music. And also at the end, we're going to joke a little bit about some total fails we've had together in creative projects of the past. And Steph's going to get real pastoral with us, give some caring and challenging words to all the creative and communicating people who are listening, who need some encouragement at this Christmas time. So here we go. I hope you just love this conversation with Stephanie McCabe from Bethel Music.
You're listening to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur, where we discuss all things creative and communications for the church. The church carries the best news in the world, so we want to help you be the best creatives and communicators in the world. Let's go.
Well, hi, Steph. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Hello.
I am so glad to finally get you. I know we've been trying to have this conversation for a while, but you've been traveling all over the place.
I have.
And not always with reliable internet. And so I'm glad to have you. We're in person here finally recording this.
Rarely with reliable internet.
That's true. So I want you to tell us a little bit about that. Where are you at right now? What are you doing? Who are you?
So right now I'm living in Redding, California, and I'm working for Bethel Music, and I work in the events department. So we put on all the tours, all the conferences, all the major events and trips that our artists go on. And I am what they call, I have an ever-changing job title because the organization is ever-changing. My current job title is brand manager for events.
Okay.
So that means I touch almost every aspect of an event, to how it looks and feels, from product and merchandise to the actual stage production.
Right. And so that sounds like you do all kinds of things, ever-changing environment. How did you get to that? Like it's kind of an unusual job, especially in the church world. Where did this come from for you?
Well, I started a ministry when I was 13 years old called 905 with my brother, and we ran Christian events in Southern Ontario region. And we started doing worship and evangelism nights and started traveling with them, and then started kind of hosting some bigger events. And that's where I learned some of these, I guess, skills or knowledge about how to run events. And then I found myself it's a longer story I won't share, but found myself in California at Bethel Church and attended their school for a couple years, and then worked as a worship pastor there for a couple years. Yeah. And then felt like I should reach out to Bethel Music and see if there's any opportunities there. Kind of just fell into this job using all these old learned skills and things that I hadn't really tapped into in a few years. Yeah. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, and I love that. Like you've been discovering what you did kind of as a teenager, running worship, youth events, that kind of stuff in Southern Ontario, which is a smaller market, I guess you could say, somewhere like around the Toronto area. And And what you did as like a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old was stuff that some people get paid a lot of money to do at a professional level. So you kind of trial by fire, you were thrown into this. And now here you are as an adult using that.
I mean, all along there's been aspects of creativity and, I've been in the creative world just in different aspects, from leading worship, working as a freelance graphic designer for the last 5 years. And now I'm really in more of a producing kind of seat where I'm not designing, but I'm working with designers.
Right. So talk about that. What does that look like at Bethel when you're talking about a tour? You're planning a tour and an event.
Yeah.
An event or a tour, and you're doing creative work. What's the team like? How does that process go?
So I can actually explain. We have a conference coming up next year. We'll be doing a conference in LA in next May 2019, and then the same conference again in Dallas. Actually, sorry, backwards. Dallas is in May and LA is in September.
Yeah.
And so what we did when we were thinking about what kind of theme are we going to build for this and communicate, we got in a room. Actually, we have this place called the River House where we do writing, and there's all sorts of meetings and recordings that happen there. And about a team of 15 of us, some work in the events department like myself, some are worship leaders or band members. We had our social media director there. We had graphic designer there, just different people who touch different areas of our ministry. And we spent some time really praying and giving some thoughtful ideas on the table to what could a theme be. And I think we came up with 6 really good options. We mapped them out.
And what does that look? Are you literally? I'm trying to picture the room. Like, you've got Post-it notes. Like, what's the literal? Because people listening to this, they do this creative stuff too. So what does that literally look like? You've got whiteboards. You've got computers. Do people have to come with an idea to pitch?
Yeah. So the idea is you're supposed to come with something. You don't have to have a full idea. Some people did have a full mapped out vision with scripture references and visuals and mood boards that they had already been thinking about, and some others just had a phrase or a theme that they wanted others to kind of help expand with them. And we had a bunch of poster paper and we stuck them up on these big windows, and I think we spent about an hour and asked people to write key verses, key themes that they feel for that particular theme potential, visuals, anything like, okay, I see the color gold related to this theme. We just wrote it all down on this map.
And so they're not even coming in with like, the leadership isn't saying the theme is, I don't know, water, or the theme is the book of Daniel, or I don't know. It's really that broad at the beginning.
Ground zero.
Got it.
What do we feel like as a community God is speaking to us?
Yeah.
And we wanted to pull that out of our team. And that's why we had people from different departments.
Got it.
Who are experiencing it in different ways.
I love that. So not just quote unquote creative department, but you're bringing in people from other perspectives.
Other perspectives.
Yeah.
And then from there, we took all those poster papers, brought them back to the office, sat on it for a little while, and our events director takes that to our senior leaders.
Okay.
Kind of narrowed it down to 2 options that we felt were kind of where we wanted to land.
Yeah.
From that stage, then we give it to a graphic designer, and they start to present different ideas.
Okay. And so can you share what that is? Are we at the place today where you can tell us more about what that theme is? Or can you give us like?
Yeah, but I can tell you about our last one.
That's great. Okay, let's talk about the last one. It's probably that'll be interesting because people listening to this can go online and access that content. So after you describe it, they could go and watch the YouTube videos or go on the websites and stuff.
So our last theme was called "God is Near" for our conference. Really connects well to really our overarching vision and message, which is heaven on earth. So anyways, when you look at our stage design, it was actually this, I think it was 6 tiers of LED that moved. And they moved into 6 different panels in the opener and extended out towards the crowd.
Yeah. And people have to go check this out online.
Yeah, it's so hard to explain. You really have
I've
to
seen
see
it myself, but it's these moving screens basically that are all panels.
Yeah. all on motors.
Yeah.
And so part of the vision behind the God is Near theme was out of a passage in the Bible talking about Jacob's ladder. So this stage design was actually supposed to represent Jacob's ladder and our connection to heaven.
Wow.
So that's why we wanted to use this to elevate the room.
Okay. And so you're literally like the panels are like the ladder steps moving up towards heaven.
And it was really a really collective project. I'm not sure I can pinpoint one person whose idea it really was. Everyone brought different pieces of it.
Yeah.
Someone brought the Jacob ladder idea. Someone else designed the stage. Someone else designed all the media.
Right.
So it was really a collective effort to make it happen.
Yeah. Now, and at Bethel, is that all people in-house, or are you're getting people from outside to contribute to projects, or is everything within the Bethel Music staff?
Some projects are all in-house, and sometimes we hire contractors.
Okay, so it depends on the project
depends
and
on
how
the
probably how
project.
big.
Depends on the project, the workflow of our team at the time, and then also skill set. Sometimes we need to hire someone who does a different thing than we might not have that skill on our staff.
Right. And so in this particular conference that just happened in Dallas, Heaven Come, like you worked for months in advance on this, tons of people were working. So then what happens on the ground? Like, what's that like when you see this vision come to life? You're all working together as a team at the actual live event.
Well, one, it's really moving when you see something you've worked on for so long actually happen. It's a little bit scary too. Because when you're doing this big thing and you don't really know exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
There's this element of, wow, this could go down south real fast.
Right.
This might not actually work.
Right.
And
we've put all of this into
so much time and money and loss of sleep and
Yeah.
heart into it. I know a lot of creatives, you pour your whole heart into a project, and if it doesn't work, that can be a big disappointment.
Yeah.
So we try and budget time to make sure we can run through things, have our editors on site, our video editors, our graphic designers. So if we see, the opener or what the speaker look like, if we need to change them, which we do, almost all of them, we have to change something. We can do that on the fly.
Right. And what is some of the stuff that you've been learning? So you're newer to this team, but you've been doing this kind of stuff for years. What is some stuff you're obviously working now at a larger scale than before in your own life? What's some stuff you've been learning from all these people around you? Maybe that's technical skill, but it can be other stuff too.
Yeah. I think in our culture with Bethel, there's a lot of spontaneity in our worship sets, and even in our speaking sessions. There's a little bit of this, you're not really sure what's going to happen, which I love. It's a little bit of a thrill as a adventurous spirit.
You feel like that adrenaline rush?
Yes.
Better than going to a roller coaster?
So honestly, I think our team all feel like, and it is communicated to us, we are actually a part of leading worship and leading the room through what we're doing with visuals.
I love that.
So there's moments where it's we're going to turn the screens off. We're not putting anything up there. Sometimes we actually...
You mean there was a plan, but now we're just cutting it
off because we feel like the Spirit's doing something else.
Wow.
The team's taking us a different direction, and we want to jump on that train and not distract from it. So even with when our worship leaders go into spontaneous songs, we don't type up the lyrics for it, because we actually just want to really fully immerse ourselves in that moment and receive what they're singing over the crowd.
Yeah. So obviously with Bethel music, people know it first for the music itself.
Yeah.
That would be if people know of Bethel Church or Bethel music, it's because of the songs that probably they might sing in their own church or they have on their own phone as they go around. But there's this whole other infrastructure that facilitates that to happen. And I'm thinking of the beauty and creativity of the album artwork and the beauty and creativity of videos that you're doing, or it's the live events, it's the merchandising, and merchandising, I don't mean that in the crass way. I mean facilitating what's happening in all kinds of ways. So what does Bethel look at? What's the value of this creativity stuff? Why not just sing the songs? I know I'm kind of like, I'm in some ways I'm going to be preaching to the choir because people listening to this are creative themselves, but your leadership as a church has said this really matters and we're going to invest.
Yeah. Well, I think even when I think of worship leading is really just in facilitating an encounter with the presence of God. And that's what we're doing with visuals too. It's a part of facilitating an encounter. So we want to move people into a corporate experience rather than a personal experience. And of course, people will be touched personally in their own unique encounters with God. But if we're moving people together in a direction corporately, we can do that through visuals as well as song and spoken word and all sorts of different elements. It's just a piece of the whole picture. Yeah.
And when I know sometimes you can go into, because you and I have had lots of conversations about creative work in the church, and there's attempts at it that can feel insincere or can feel cheesy. How do you get away from that? Because you want it to be genuine, but you also don't want it to be frankly, you don't want it to be lame.
Yeah.
Or what was happening 10 years ago. How are you chasing down the fresh thing?
Yeah, I think that's always a struggle, and one thing on our team that we do talk about is we never want to compare. When you start to let comparison enter your world, that's when you actually kind of unlock yourself from the heavenly aspect of it, and we want true heavenly inspiration. And of course you get inspired by things around you, but if you're constantly trying to one-up yourself or someone else, you're going to lose the vision for the whole thing, and it won't be authentic anymore.
Every Sunday when we do, it's got to be bigger than the one before. Or every Easter production's got to be bigger than the one before.
When you start thinking that way, that's when things go south. That's when it starts to feel not authentic.
Yeah.
Because you're chasing a production. You're not chasing the heart of God.
Oh, I like that. The thing that might be the next year's Easter might be much smaller and quieter and simpler, less budget than the one before.
Yeah, you just have to tap into what God is really speaking to your community at that time.
Yeah, and how do you think people should go about that? You're talking a lot about pursuing the heart of God, entering into worship. How do people, as leaders and communicators and creatives, how do they lead the way in that? What are some practices that they can do, or that you do, that your team does?
Yeah. I'd say get in the Word of God, pray, worship, and do this all in community. Don't do it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, let community be part of your experience with encountering and pursuing God. And always be pursuing His Word. And there's so many things to uncover in the Word of God that when we invite His presence and His Spirit into it, I think He unlocks mysteries that we didn't see before. You can read the same passage 100 times, and His presence comes over you in a new way, and He unlocks something else. And I think that's the same thing with creativity. Yeah. I think if you are continually pursuing His presence and the heart of God and His Spirit, He will actually give you the mysteries of heaven, which is far better than copying someone else.
Yeah. And so what about the idea of, I don't want to give my best idea because I may not have another good idea?
Oh, I love when people ask this.
Let's talk about that.
If you think that, then your view of God is so small. If you think you only have one good idea, one hit song, one opportunity, then you have just put a limit on a limitless God. Wow. And you will probably only have that one thing because you're not believing for anything bigger. We serve a God who is the creator, the most creative. We have access to things I don't even know about. I can't even explain it because I don't have words for it. There are words that are not been identified yet to explain these things. Yeah. That's how huge this is. So if we start to believe that we've done our biggest and best thing, or
most significant, maybe it's not biggest, but most significant.
Our most significant thing.
Most creative.
Our best years are behind us. Or I won't get another idea like that. That is just so not true. Wow. It is so false. And that's actually, I believe, a lie from the enemy to stop God's kingdom from advancing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of that has to do with like fear of failure, or like, as you say, comparison. It's this comparison game that we get trapped in, whether that's comparing to our previous selves and the good thing that happened in the past, or comparing to like another group. Like there's lots of people who compare what they do to Bethel, or compare what they do to Hillsong, or compare to Elevation, or I don't know, whoever their favorites are, and like that's a different church.
Yeah. You just got to silence the noise of the world and just look at your local community and keep your eyes on that. When you start looking outward and trying to become like someone else, it's not going to work. It's only so long that you can keep that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's this all this cheesy stuff that, people make, I don't know, inspirational captions on Instagram about. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken, Steph. Like, I don't know, and like all that crap. But like, it's cheesy, but it is true. And it sounds cliche when people quote these kinds of things, but we talk about it more on a personal level, how we need to be individuals and we need to have our own identity and our own creative outlets, or we need to follow our own path or whatever. But then sometimes when it comes to a corporate level, my observation is it changes. We need to be like Bethel. We need to be like, I don't know, fill in the blank, all the big churches or creative things that we admire. And so then where is the place for admiration or inspiration from creative work? I mean, even at Bethel, you would be looking to the world. Where do you get inspiration and creativity from?
Yeah, I mean, all around me. And I think that is really good to be inspired and admire what other places have done. But if you look at it and admire it and want to copy it, that's when you've actually just limited yourself.
Yeah.
Because every one of us, whether we label ourselves as creative or not, we are creative. We're all creative individuals.
Do you think everybody is creative?
Yes, absolutely, in different ways. Everyone has a different vehicle for their creativeness, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And if we tell ourselves that we don't have it in us, we never will. We'll never do anything with that. We'll lay stagnant. And it is our job to actually unlock that inside of ourselves. It's a God-given gift to us. We are born creative, and we have to figure out how to let that out.
Yeah. What do you think, like, prevents people? Like, you and I have known each other for a while, and so you know some of my own journey, and I never called myself a creative person. Probably, well, until the time period where you and I were working more closely together. I didn't know that was in me. It wasn't maybe an identified thing. So what do you think prevents people from tapping into that part of themselves?
Fear.
Okay.
And I mean, you only get over that if you start taking risks. So I think so many people even on creative teams, I've done this myself, sit in a room, I've got an idea, something's brewing inside of me. I might not even have a language to it, but because I don't feel like it's fully formed, I won't say anything. Because I'm afraid that people won't understand it or get it, or maybe it's not a good one. But you have to start laying stuff on the line and just put it out there to allow it to actually flow from you.
And so that, obviously you need trust then. Like, you can't be in a room full of, like, people, you can't consistently be in a room with people who are tearing down your ideas and also facilitate creativity.
No.
I mean, sometimes that happens. Some people are like, that's not a good idea.
No, that's true. And not all of our ideas are good ones. There's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, and that too, where then there's the creative extreme to the other side, where, like, every creative whim is not to be explored
beyond.
Like, sometimes it's just a weird or bad or lame idea. Just move on from that one. When do you know an idea is to die? Like, so speaking of, like, you start exploring down a path, and you and I have done some stuff in the past where, oh dear, you get halfway into it and you're like, this is crap. And we're not coming out the other end.
This isn't going to recover.
So, like, but do you have an example? I don't know. I'm putting you on the spot on that.
Oh, man. I'm sure you probably have one.
Oh, man. Well,
I'm sure you have one of mine.
Oh, man. I mean, there's so many things that we've done together creatively. I think this isn't like a creative project, but I always laugh about the time where we did a digital annual report together. And then we decided for our annual meeting, we would do printed versions of sort of like a long, slender card to reproduce what was on this website. And well, what happened, Steph?
This design was awesome, but when you print it, it was like 4 ants. It was tiny.
Like it was an annual report for ants.
You could not read it.
It must be 3 times the size. And so like that was like a fail. That was like, I mean, the great news there was it was a total fail. Like we got these cards from the printer. They are so tiny you can't read the font. It's hilariously bad. Yeah. And so we had a boss who had a good sense of humor. Yeah. He obviously this was a fail. There was nothing that could be done. It was too late to fix. So what did he do? He brings them to the annual meeting and he pulls out a magnifying glass. And he made a joke out of it. Everyone had a good laugh. He pulls up a report. He pulls out a magnifying glass, and in front of everybody he just had to make a joke out of it because we had totally failed.
Yeah. Another one I'm thinking of is, remember when we had 3 services and it was 9:09, 11:11, and 6:06?
Yep.
I don't remember whose idea this was, but we were all on board with it at some time.
Yeah.
And we thought this was brilliant, like great, like, I don't know, marketing or communication.
At the time.
It was so confusing.
Yeah, it's bad.
It was so confusing to everyone. What time church started at.
Yeah, that was about 8 or 9 years ago. Yeah. We have grown. Grown. That was not helpful. Were you and I working together on the project with the neon cross that we tried to bring outside, and we realized you couldn't see the neon outside? Yeah. It wasn't bright enough, and then the cross broke.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
The neon shattered. It was a whole thing.
Yes, that
was a total fail.
But I think back to your question, how do you know when you need to let an idea die?
Yeah.
Because honestly, you will face lots of opposition when you present something new. And it's really honestly a gut feeling where you got to know, like, do you think this can actually translate? Do you feel really confident, or are you just trying to push your own creative vision?
Yeah.
I mean, I keep going back to how the Holy Spirit speaks in this, but that's what you really got to go back to is like, okay, is this a God-breathed idea, or is this just
a Steph?
Me trying to make my thing happen? Mm. And if it's a God-breathed idea, people will catch on. It doesn't mean you won't face opposition in the beginning, but people will catch on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also we have leaders. Yeah. No matter who we are, whether we have clients who tell us the final say, or we have a boss, a senior pastor, whoever that may be, there is ultimately someone that our work is under the submission of. Right. Because we aren't just doing art that is for art's sake necessarily. Most of us who are in listening to this podcast are doing art, creative work, and communication work, media work for a purpose. So it's more design oriented than art for art's sake, right. Art to display in a gallery. Mm-hmm. So if art has a purpose, it also has to have someone who can say yes or no to it. So like, how do you handle that? Like if the boss says, like, I don't get it, or I don't like it, mm-hmm. or I don't want it, and you've worked on something, you're passionate about it, what do you do?
You got to submit to your leaders and you let it die.
But what would be some ways in which that you think you can advocate for the idea before you have to let it die?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just not getting it, but you actually really think that this is a God-breathed idea. Yeah. And so if there's a space for conversation, how do you bring that to someone who doesn't get, or especially if like the boss is not creative, right. but you have to submit this stuff underneath their leadership. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
I mean, on a practical level, I love to use mood boards in presentations and kind of paint the picture of the storyline. If I can't communicate it well, people probably aren't going to.
How is he or she who's going to lead it?
If we're at the end of it, they're still going, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's probably a bad idea.
It's a bad idea. Yeah.
If they go, I get what you're talking about, I just don't like it, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Because that's preference now.
Yeah.
And that's where you can kind of hash it out a little bit.
Yeah.
And, go,
and each organization has a different
preference.
Who makes the final call on that. Like for me, there are things that my leader doesn't necessarily quote unquote like in terms of taste, but I get to make the call on that because he's like, you are hired to make these taste decisions. Right. I'm an older senior leader in a different kind of a role. Yeah. I'm trusting that even if I don't like it, I like it in terms of I don't like the colors and I don't get the font.
Yeah.
That's fine because you're in charge of that.
Right.
But in other organizations, that would just be a no. It's off the table.
Right.
And in your organization, how would that go?
I mean, for different things, it's different.
Yeah. Like
we have a creative director, so they give the final say on all designed print web media.
Yeah.
And then I'm like a creative events producer, so I work with our creative director, but I'm on the ground with our events, giving that direction. So we empower our team. We make plans and empower our team. So our lighting director goes and does his thing, but sometimes I'm like, hey, I don't really love the way that orange is looking right now.
Yeah.
It's looking a little bit weird on that girl's hair.
Yeah.
And so we need to fix that. So those are the times where I come in and go, hey, I think we need to make some adjustments, and I have the final say.
Yeah.
But there's so much freedom to move around in that.
Hey, can we talk about merch?
Yes.
Because there are, again, in the world of copying,
Yeah.
there are lots of churches now who are saying, hey, I want to do merch.
Yeah.
Because a lot of other churches are doing it, and we think there's maybe something in it for us.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that world that you know a lot about in Bethel land.
What do you want to know about it more specifically?
Yeah, like tell me about why do you sell merch and who designs it?
Yeah. So we sell merch because there's a demand for it. People want it.
Yeah.
It's a great way to supplement our budget and also continue to communicate our messaging.
Right.
So we do have lines that are basic, say Bethel music on it, and then we have some other ones that have song lyrics or different inspirational phrases and such. And we have a product development team who comes up with all these brilliant ideas.
Yeah. And they're inspired by all kinds of stuff.
All sorts of things.
They're looking at people like their inspiration from Nike or their inspiration from, I don't know, Justin Bieber's latest line, or I don't know. Like you're looking at what trends are in fashion.
They're really looking ahead, and they're really brilliant people.
Yeah.
Really trust. Honestly, sometimes they send stuff and I'm like, I don't know. But they're so on the ground with what is trending and what the future trends are and predicting them, that I'm like, okay, sure, let's go with that.
That seems...
I guess
that's
so.
cool, I guess.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But if we're relying on just what I think is cool, I mean, we'd all be wearing button-down shirts and buying our clothes at Old Navy. So.
Well, come on, it's not that bad. You're pretty fashionable.
Okay.
Don't put. I mean, but to be fair,
I'm describing my outfit today.
Yeah, but when you live in Redding, California, there aren't a lot of shop options.
That is true.
Whereas, like, for me, I live in a major city. Every store of the world is out, literally within a 5-minute walk of my house. And
you're limited.
I'm a little bit less limited, but I would be looking to Bethel, this Bethel music and this town that's sort of isolated.
Yeah.
Yet they're like setting trends or like marking trends, following trends in terms of fashion and design, even for merchandise.
One thing that I've learned a lot about merchandise in the last couple months is people want their clothing to say something.
Huh. Do you mean literally like have a statement, or they want it to say something to the world?
They want it to say a statement. They want it to provoke a conversation.
Oh, okay. And so that's the kind of stuff that...
Our top selling items are always something with a message on it.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. And do you find that it changes from market to market? Like you go to LA or New York versus Wichita, Kansas.
Yes.
What's the difference?
I think in different markets, there's some markets that will buy higher priced items and more trendy items. In LA, we can sell a camo shirt that is like ironic and people buy it.
Yeah.
People who buy the camo shirt in Arkansas are buying it because they like camo.
And they go hunting.
Right.
Or something.
So it's different in different markets.
Yeah.
We can sell a $50 hoodie in New York City.
Yeah.
And people love it, but that might be a little bit out of the price range for some other smaller towns who are looking at the $25 t-shirt.
Yeah.
And
And
so we have products that vary in price range and style, and some that are a little bit more fashion forward, and then we have some that are a little bit more basic.
classic, basic stuff that'll appeal to more people. And of course, some people feel it's a bit crass, right? Church ministry stuff, making merchandise. It feels, is this like Jesus going into the temple, turning over the tables, all that kind of stuff? Why do you guys, what does the money from merchandise facilitate?
Oh, it facilitates us traveling and doing events.
Right.
It facilitates our conference. It
Okay.
facilitates creating more albums. It facilitates sending people on missions trips around the world. It facilitates ministry.
Right. So the money
sorts of
from a
stuff.
t-shirt goes back into the ministry
yeah.
of,
Absolutely.
of the church and music and all this kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not a for-profit endeavor.
No.
Like it's not a for-profit company in the sense of it's the one guy who's getting rich off of the merchandise. This is going right back into
It goes right back
Yeah.
into the ministry.
yeah. Because we're living in a time where albums aren't really being purchased.
That's true.
And so, can we talk a little bit about that? Like, there's not really in music. If music isn't really the place, people aren't buying that. That there's this other way to make the money to do the thing.
Right.
What does that look like? Because Bethel creates music on a larger scale than smaller churches like my own. We do music at a small scale. Are you guys still making CDs? Do people buy Bethel CDs?
So we are still making CDs, though our last album that just came out called Moments, we actually weren't planning on doing a physical copy.
Okay.
We were just
Wow.
going to do a digital release. Then at the last minute we decided, let's just print some.
And how many would be some? I mean, maybe I don't know.
Actually,
if you
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know how many.
I guess I'm just curious. Like
When I heard
when you
print
say
them,
you're
I just
printing a
requested
few,
how
yeah,
many I needed for
Yeah, fair
what
enough.
I was doing.
Fair
I
enough.
actually don't know
yeah.
the details on
But
that.
relative to amount of
Relative-
listeners, not that many physical copies.
Not that many physical copies.
Yeah.
And relative to apparel sales, it's like, honestly, you look at it and you're like, is it even worth selling CDs anymore?
Right.
That's kind of where things have gone. Sometimes we sell more vinyls than
Okay.
we do CDs.
Right. Because people, it's the nostalgia factor of the records.
Right.
Yeah. People want those if they're not streaming it off Spotify or
Yeah.
Apple Music or whatever. And so, in the old days, selling the albums made the money to do the tours and to do the living of all the people who are funding, who are behind an artist. But now, it's actually probably the merchandising
Yeah, merchandising is part of supplementing.
that supplements the ability to do all the other work.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And so there's lots of young creatives who are listening to this, creatives and communicators and media people. You've worked in all of those spheres. But I want you to talk to them like you're the pastor now, because you are a pastor.
Okay.
We haven't talked too much about that side of your work and your ministry. But you've spent a ton of time doing ministry to youth and young adults. What do you see as the big needs for young people, and particularly young creatives? What is the needs of this generation, and talk to them like you're their pastor now.
Okay. Man, there's so many different directions we
Yeah.
can go with this. I talked about it earlier about taking risk. There's a huge part of working in a creative industry where you really have to put your heart on the line, your work on the line, and it's really connected. It's something that's birthed out of you, and it takes a level of vulnerability to really put it out there. So I'd say to a lot of people, put your stuff out there and trust that God's going to take care of your heart with it and going to work that out for you and going to protect your heart in it. Don't hoard your ideas with the fear that someone's not going to like them. Really trust that you have something inside of you to give to the world.
Yeah.
Another thing I'd say, piece of advice is craft your creative gifting and steward it well and use it daily. Find out what what you need to kind of nurture that creative element inside of you. Some people, that's nature. A friend of mine's a songwriter. He reads poetry every day, pages and pages of poetry, because he wants to use his words in a new way. He wants to develop that skill even more, whether or not he's actually writing a song that day.
Right.
He's nurturing that creative part inside of him. Don't be lazy with it. Don't think that an idea is just going to fall in your mind and you're just going to put it out there and it's going to do this massive thing. You have to actually steward the gift of creativity on your life if you want God to use you in a big way.
Yeah. So what does it look like for like young people? The classic thing is impatience.
Yeah.
Like you have a big vision, you feel this thing inside of you that God is doing, and you want to bring it out to the world, and you want it. Frankly, we want it like tomorrow. Yeah. Like if we feel like if it's like a 25-year-old who hasn't quote unquote made it big yet, they're doing something wrong and they're like working at it. Like what does it look like? I know Bethel, the culture of honor and like the look of like submission to authority and leaders, and what does that look like for a young person who has big dreams and big ambitions?
I mean, for submission to leadership, I think it means laying out your options before people and allowing them the opportunity to speak into them in a way that could change your direction. True submission really means that you're allowing yourself to be influenced in a way that might direct you somewhere different. If we're inviting people to speak into our lives, but just allowing them to share their opinion, not actually allowing them to shape us, that's not submission.
Right.
That's just listening.
Yeah, or hearing and moving on.
Yes. That's just hearing what someone has to say. But when you actually allow someone to shape who you are and where you're going, that's where actually I think the kingdom comes into your life, and you are walking in relationship with God and community.
Yeah, I love that. And so talk about the community piece. I know that's huge for you in your work with young adults. What do you see is missing in our understanding of what community looks like?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think they have a great community, but it's very surface level and lacking in depth and roots. And some people might think, well, I shared with them all this deep stuff.
Yeah.
I'm vulnerable, but you're not really being vulnerable until you actually allow someone to influence your heart. Allow them to touch that piece of you rather than just lay it out on a table for someone and go, this is it. Yeah. But when you actually allow someone to shape you, that's where true friendship and true community happens. And it's sometimes really uncomfortable. It's not convenient always. Yeah. It's not even easy sometimes. Yeah. But it takes practice too. You have to put yourself out there. You have to choose it. Yeah. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, it's that intentionality.
It doesn't just fall into place. A deep community. Sure, friendships.
Hangouts, easy.
Yeah, hanging out, fringe friends, as I'd call them. Yeah. The people that hey, what are you doing right now? Let's go do this.
And there's nothing wrong with those relationships.
You need that.
Everybody needs those people.
But you need people that you go on a deep level with who it's a two-sided relationship where they are shaping you and you're shaping them.
Yeah, so really practically, what does that look like in your life?
I have a group of 3 friends, so 4 including me. We meet every other Thursday morning at 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Which, if you're a parent, is a normal time, but you and I are not parents, so that's
a horrible time.
That's a horrible time.
But we do that so we can get together before work.
Yeah.
And sometimes,
because you had to find a time that worked. Yeah. So 7 a.m. is a practical decision.
And for a long time, I was working freelance, so I wasn't getting up at 7 a.m. But one of my friends started work at 8:30, so so that's when we had to do it. Right. Whereas I could have been sleeping until 10. Yeah. But I chose that community. I chose that relationship, and I valued it. And that's when it worked for the group. Yeah. And
when you get together, you're memorizing scripture? I don't know. What do you do together?
There's no agenda.
Yeah. Okay.
Ever. Okay. Except food.
Food and meaningful conversation.
Yeah. food and meaningful conversations. Sometimes that's just catching up.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's something going on that we got to talk about.
Right.
I was going through a rough time a couple months ago, and those are the people who I went to, hey guys, I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling
all these things.
I'm uninspired. I'm feeling stuck. Those are the people who I talk to about that.
Right. Yeah. And so as a creative or a communications person, people may be saying, why are we spending so much time talking about this community thing? Mm-hmm. This is a podcast about creative stuff. Come on, Joe, move on. But the idea is this is a foundation for you.
Yes.
That the creativity and the work you do and the positions that you are being given by leaders who trust you with them is because you have built and are building that foundation in your life with this particular group of people at 7 a.m. and a few others too. I mean, they're not the only people. Yeah. I love that. And a lot of people, they're moving around too much.
Yes. I think that's a big issue in young adults, actually, and even beyond young adults. There's an increase in media right now with Instagram, Facebook, so many different avenues for that where we can see what other people are doing. Yeah. And sometimes it looks way more fun than what we're doing. Yeah. And so we're looking for that next adventure, that next adrenaline rush, that next exciting thing, that next photo op, which causes us to move from place to place and never fully put down roots.
Yeah. I love that.
And if you don't put down roots, you're going to sway.
Yeah, that's it. We'll wrap up. What is a project or two that you look at in your work? You are young, but have actually had a long history of work. What's one of the projects or two that you feel proud of? Why do you feel proud of it? Maybe proud isn't the right word, but you look back with fondness.
I feel that way about every project. Every new one feels like I'm more excited about it. You know this with me.
I do know this about you. I wondered if you would say that, actually.
This is the best one.
Just
the other day.
You and I were working on this project this week, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm really excited about this. Is the best. This is the best.
Yes.
And I think you do that every time, and you mean it every time.
Yes, I do mean it.
Yeah, because you put your heart into it.
Yeah, because I'm excited about it. It feels fresh, and it feels new, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to look back even.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking forward.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the newness for you comes in the creative work, but not in the people that you're doing it with. Right. You're building a foundation. You're committing yourself into a church in the long term. Yeah. And that doesn't mean there aren't times to move to a different place. Yeah. But the creativity and the freshness is coming in the work. Right. In what's coming up in your meetings, but you're building that trust over the long term. Yeah. You're in it for the long haul together. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Anything else to close? Anything that you're like, oh man, she didn't ask me this?
To close, I would like to say dream big and trust that God has great plans for you.
Love it. Steph, thanks so much for joining. I know people are going to be encouraged. I think there's some people who need to share this one with a friend because it's not just for your friend, though. It's for you, too. So, don't just think, oh, so-and-so needs to hear this. It's for you. But I know that there's people that are going to be encouraged just by your work. And if people want to find you or find Bethel Music, how do they see this work that you're talking about?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Stephanie McCabe.
Yeah, and we'll put it in the show notes.
And check out Bethel's Instagram, too.
And there's Bethel Music, because there's a few different Bethel accounts. So if they want to see, we're talking about this Heaven Come, this conference, the Dallas, the Jacob's Ladder, they should go on Instagram. Should they search it on YouTube?
Search it on YouTube and Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Steph, thanks so much. And just excited to see what comes next with these conferences coming up in 2019. Can't wait to see all the creative work you're part of. Thanks for what you do.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur. Head over to joannalafleur.com for more practical tools, interviews, and videos for creatives and communicators. We'd love to help you be the best you can be at communicating the best news in the world. Tap that subscribe button.